Hello, welcome to the Voyage Clinics Podcast. I'm Dr. Shaunna Sanders, your host, and today we have some very special guests. Not only do we have my totally gorgeous wife, Shaunna Sanders, here today, but we also have two of my favorite people and neighbors in Utah, Hal and Dianna Black. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today. I want to give a little bit about your guys' background. Our topic today, by the way, is aging gracefully, and there have been many podcasts on longevity, and I'm a fan of some of the Huberman Labs and Peter Attia's, and they talk about longevity. But one thing that they often lack is just actually having old people on their podcast. So here we are. Welcome to the podcast. It's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited. How
people?
Yeah. Well,
maybe experience.
You're in the flesh. This is longevity manifested. It's just there. It is. Hal, tell us about your background. Now, you were a professor at BYU for a long time. I want to hear your educational journey and where you grew up and all the things.
I grew up in Blanding, Utah, when I'd hardly say my education started there, at least not formal. I went to school. I was not a student. And I got out of school when the building burned down.
Good. Well, that's good.
And that's how I graduated. So I was raised in Blanding. The town's about 1,000 people. And got out of high school in 1956. I know I don't look that old. Thank you.
No, you don't.
But then I went to school at BYU back in the day when BYU took anyone who applied. So there was 8,000 or 9,000 people back then.
Yeah.
And I went because my friends went. I didn't want to stay home without them, so I went as well. So then I got turned on to zoology kind of my freshman year. Went back home to work for a year and went on an LDS mission for a couple of years and came back and was in a roadshow in Blanding, and Dianna was there as a pretty little Siamese, one of the Siamese twins in the roadshow production. And my left ventricle would have been affected in my heart even if it had been smaller because I was smitten with an arrow.
The left.
Fortunately, it was a blonde arrow.
Right through the
So then we got married a year later, and as soon as I waited for her to get out of high school, and then we got married. So I'm an old person, but she's not.
Oh, that's really cute. Where did you serve in the mission?
We are Siamese, if you please.
Yeah.
Minnesota.
There can be no finer brides than we
I
am.
wish they had been video recording that roadshow. They
Yeah.
don't even
was
do them
fun.
anymore.
No,
Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah, that's where we met at a roadshow back in the days where it was truly a roadshow. It was taken to the wards in Moab, Utah, and in Monticello. So it was a roadshow.
And you served a 2-year mission where?
In Minnesota.
Oh, yeah, so foreign.
Yeah. It was different.
Minnesota,
It's
don't you know?
Cold country.
I love everyone I've ever met from Minnesota has been fantastic.
Yeah, it was a
love 'em.
good 2 years.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Then we came back and went off to school and stayed in school for
10 out of 11.
10 of the first 11 years we were married, we were in school. So we had, and it was a good thing. We had each other and we were away from our hometown and parents, and it was a good beginning.
And you did your degree in zoology, continued in zoology in undergrad, and then a postgrad work also at BYU?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, some, and then went to got a degree in Utah, a couple of degrees, and then went to New Mexico and got turned on to a bunch of bat work for a dissertation. And then after that, we went immediately to Zambia, Africa for a couple of years, and then back to BYU where we spent 30-odd years.
Were you a PhD at the time when you went to do the batty thing in New Mexico?
No, we got that degree there.
Oh, down there. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Zambia after with your PhD.
Yeah.
What work were you doing there?
Again, just teaching at the university. Zambia is a university of about 1,000 people. Almost everyone there was expatriate. And so that was really wild. We learned what it was like to be a minority. there was probably 5, 6 white kids in the school, and the rest were native Zambians. And it was a great sociological experience.
I bet. Yeah. Your emphasis in your PhD, what emphasis?
It was bat ecology and behavior, foraging ecology. So a lot of night work with Diana and the kids over in the tent. And,
Don't take it that way.
No, I was going to say, well, that's okay. Good night work. Call it what you want, Hal.
Yeah.
But wait, where did the bears come from then?
That was later when we came to BYU. And,
okay.
The Utah Division of Wildlife Resources wanted a long-term study, and we said we'd do it. Well, they didn't want it as long as it turned out to be, but we stretched it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You've gone through a lot of bear scat in your day.
Yeah, yeah. Someone once said, we laughed at the work we did. I think one of my students with help went through 1,700 black bear scat samples. And we used to be teased about it, but I'd say, well, if someday asked you, does a bear crap in the woods, who would know better than us?
Yeah, you would know.
Yeah.
How many children did y'all have?
We had 4. Mm-hmm. First child died, and after 24 hours, it was just too little, too early. And then we have 3 children living.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your journey. That's super concise, but also great. And I want to hear Diana's journey.
Well, mine started in Boulder City, Nevada.
Really? I'm also from Nevada.
Yeah, I know.
Boulder City, I know.
You're
that
just a little higher up.
250 some odd miles. Yeah.
I was born in St. George because my mother lived in Boulder City and my aunt lived in Blanding, and they had to meet halfway because they were due at the same time, and Grandma took care of them. So, so anyway, we were downwinders, both of us, which was interesting. I didn't go to Blanding
That
until...
means downwind of some of the atomic test site stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm familiar with that growing up in Central Nevada. Yes.
Yes, I am too. Mm-hmm. I remember waking up one night, or not quite asleep. I'm not quite sure. I was young, maybe 8 or 9. And I remember the brilliant light. And then it was either the noise or the wind. I think it was the wind that came first and then the noise. And it scared me. It really did.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went to some school in Boulder City, Nevada, and then moved when I was about 10 to Blanding, which was fortunate given what's happened later.
Yeah.
And finished high school there. And then we got married and went to the University of Utah. And the neat thing about that, somebody said, wow, you were young. Yes, I was. And I was 5 years younger than he was. So, but the neat thing was that he had all of this stuff going on, this new stuff that I had never heard. And I just loved learning. I remember when I was little, about 3, 4, 5, somewhere around there, sitting on my dad's knee, and he would have the newspaper, and he would open it up, and he'd say, let's read the newspaper today. And every day it was the same thing. And I felt so important that I could read. Couldn't make out a thing, but I could read, and I felt like that. And my dad was a great reader, and so I loved absolutely just reading every book I could get my hands on, staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning to finish it because I couldn't put it down. But anyway, we took off for the University of Utah, and he got his master's degree, bachelor's and master's. And then we went to the University of New Mexico. But all of that time, I was typing his papers for him. We were talking about how we could make them better. We were talking about the principles of zoology. I was learning things that I had never, ever, living in Blanding, you have some feel for wildlife and that. But it was really interesting to be learning about how, what was it, the pica, and how, was it the kidneys? Yeah, how certain stresses affected the kidneys in picas. Well, I don't know how many other people in the world did that. I don't know how many other people in the world helped their husbands set 18,000 mouse traps in the course of 2 summers.
Probably not many.
Probably not many. But anyway.
Back to the wildlife, though. I had the distinction of teaching her how to poach.
Yeah.
Which I think, John, you may have some experience of that, raised in the country, as a country boy. So it was wasn't for fun. It was I learned it from my dad, who did it for meat. And we learned about wildlife in a very applied way back then.
Yes. And in fact, every October we went home from Salt Lake City or New Mexico, Albuquerque, just to hunt because that's the meat that we lived on.
That was the legal meat.
Yeah.
That was hunting season right there.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to get into that. Anyway, it was later that when we went to Africa. And I really think, looking back on it, that for those 2 years, I'd had some great learning experiences, but I think that was probably the most excruciating and exciting, both at the same time, kind of experience to have. We learned a lot, and it was tough, but we learned an awful lot, and I just loved it. I thought it was great, except when the elephant and the hippo chased us. So that wasn't much fun. But at the same time, I was driving backwards. He was taking pictures of the elephant coming at us. So I guess we got something out of it. Yeah. Then it was later, after our kids were in high school, and they had no time for home at all anyway, that I went back to school and finished my bachelor's and master's there and taught at BYU for some 20 years.
Yeah.
In English literature.
Advanced writing.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that is so neat. The passion for learning and that journey from both of you guys, is I think part of what lends itself to your just aging so gracefully. I think, I look at my dad, right? He passed away last year, but he was not very pleasant to be around in his older age. He just got crotchety and kind of ornery and kind of, stuck in a lot of thinking processes. I could hang with him for a while, but after a few, I would just, okay, Dad, I'm going to go for a walk. It was just hard, So I wonder if that pursuit of continued education and that passion for learning and reading and has just contributed to the neuroplasticity and how just downright pleasant you guys are to be around.
Nice.
Well, thank you. But I can say something about that. It could be good genes. You're a doctor. You know that. It could be just simply good genes. He's a hybrid. Well, not as much a hybrid as I am, but But I just think some people are just endowed with some kind of, maybe it's the telomeres. I don't know what it is, but or it could be like I hope I have this right. Apollo, who put grains of sand in Sybil's hand, and said, "You will live 1 year for every grain of sand." And, if you have a full hand of it, gosh, I'd be a female Methuselah, So, I don't know if it's that or good genes or just luck. I don't know.
Also, I think, that old cliche, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, which no one goes beyond that when they quote that to criticize you or something.
Well, this happened. Yeah. This happened in a church meeting. And after he had been in school for a while, we went home, and it felt like it was directed at us. And our little town was pretty closed. And this person said, "Well, we all know a little knowledge is a dangerous thing." And I sat back and I thought, "Come on, finish it. Come on, finish." And he didn't. And it was used as a criticism.
But the finish is...
Drink not.
Yeah.
Or drink deep, and taste not the Pierian spring.
Taste not. Mm-hmm. So I think that old cliche is maybe true, but the danger is not to the people who probably don't drink deep. So I think if you come to a certain level, then you really do learn to do that other cliche that the more you learn, the more ignorant you make yourself, because you see how much there is you don't know. And I think once you get to that point, then how can life ever be boring when you know that there's stuff out there to read, to see, to touch? And one thing, Diane and I are never bored. We don't. When we hear people say, "Oh, I'm bored," we think, "Oh, that's too bad."
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told myself that I was bored once in my life, because there's just so much.
The passion for discovery, I think, is beautiful, and it definitely thrives in you guys. I think there are things that you do now to like continue learning and growing, and I want to speak to kind of your journals too, because that's super cool. But what are you guys doing now to continue kind of learning and growing?
Diana's into fiction and I'm into science.
Yeah.
I have a science news magazine that my friend Dr. White, closest friend at the Y, brings to me when we go to lunch once a month.
Dr. White is the Falcon guy.
Yeah, he is. And fading fast, unfortunately, a dear friend. But for me, when I sit down to read, it can't be very long, and the science news stories are short enough that I don't lose interest. I should say lose interest. I realize, I could be out splitting some wood or something else. So for me, that's the reading I do, and it keeps me, there's always some new fun thing. And then Diana tells me stories about Emma and Jane and Austin and those people, and we go.
Emma is not a peer. Yeah. Anyway.
But anyway, yeah. So my dad started acting old when he was 50 or so, and even then, as a kid, I was always active, and I would say, "Dad, don't act your age. Try anything. Do not act your age. It will take care of it. You don't have to help it along." And so we both, I think, in our activities, try not to act our age. In fact, once in a while, I think if I'm honest, I'll say I would tell someone my age, because most of the time when you do that, it's been my experience, they don't believe you're as old as you are. And I choose to think that's because they see you don't act that old. Mm-hmm. And so, we don't try to coax age along. We try to ignore it.
If I can tie into that, your wonderful sense of humor started much like years ago. And one of the funny things that I remember you told me was that you and Dr. White published an article together so you can be Dr. Black and White.
That we did.
That was the sole purpose of this publication.
We talked about it, and in fact, it was the first thing I had my name on, and he was going to school, and he went through this marshy area, and there was a monarch butterfly migration, and for some reason, there was a lot of death from vehicles on the. It's just south of Provo where he was at. So he started collecting all the birds that were hit, and kept track of them by species, and then it was just there at the marsh where the butterflies were passing through. And so then he wrote this paper called High Localized Bird Mortality as a Function of Monarch Butterfly Migration. And then he wrote it and sent it to the journal as a note, and he made me lead author. So I got, back in the days, I got articles on requests for reprints, which we had those days before computers. And I thought, what the hell is this? And I didn't have a copy because he didn't tell me he had done it. It was a surprise. So we take great pride in this paper, but it was fun because it would be quoted black and white, 1968 or something.
78.
No, it was 68. It was.
Oh.
It was still. Yeah, it was 68. It was still.
That's right.
Yeah, and so that was our first. Great. We've been waiting for the people from Scandinavia land to ask us to come, but no one's called yet.
There's still hope.
Yeah,
The kindling and the retention of humor, I think, also plays to aging gracefully and being quick to laugh and quick to smile. And I think you both have that talent, and it's really beautiful. I have many Hal jokes in my armamentarium, in my repertoire now. Yeah, most of them I'll have to hold
mark this. Is it made for kids? No, it's not.
But I think it's so healthy as part of our aging gracefully is just keep a smile right under the surface and a laugh even closer, you know.
Well, when you're talking about doing this and when you're working with a companion, sometimes it gets a little tough at times, but there are a lot of times when, and especially him because his brain works so that he has to have an alternative to everything. And so, for instance, I thought it was pretty quick for him when I was teaching and I had an 8:00 class and we had to get ready and get up to campus, and then I had to grab my stuff and run right across the entire campus. And I was running just a bit late. And so on the way, I said, Hal, would you mind not stopping for your regular Pepsi this morning? And he said...
That's when you had to get the caffeinated Pepsi and bring it onto campus because at the time it was not caffeinated on campus.
Oh, yeah.
So I was stopping to get the real stuff to take to the office.
And he did love his Pepsi.
Yes.
So,
still.
But he pulled into Chevron down on 4th South, and I thought, but I just asked him not to, please. I need to get there. And he says, well, it'll only take me a minute. So he runs in, gets his Pepsi, comes back out, and I'm sitting there thinking about it. And I say to him,
say what you
sometimes,
said. Say what you said.
Give us the nonfiction version. It's okay. Blending a little colorful language and blending's normal.
What I said was, sometimes I think you love Pepsi more than you love me. And his brain clicked in, and he said, but I love you more than Coke. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose maybe if we weren't who we were, and I realized what teasing we do with each other, I would have said, that hurt. I would have felt, gosh, maybe I am just second place because he stopped anyway. I had asked him not to. But then I thought, I know how much he loves Pepsi. So second isn't really bad. So, yeah. And I think we both have it's a little harder for me to keep up with his alternatives because I've told you before, he has quad A double D, and I won't explain it here, but he's, this thing up here is going all the time. But at the same time, there are things he didn't know that I had to teach him. I mean, he's a scientist, and he taught me all this stuff while we were going through every bit of his schooling and in Zambia and teaching. And it was my turn. And so I thought, okay. So we rode to school together for what? Well, my 20 years, and before that, while I was still in school. And we talked about things all the way in and all the way back. And sometimes it was science, but sometimes it was Shakespeare and Donne. And sometimes it was Atlas Shrugged. And sometimes it was, what else? I mean, gosh.
One of the fun collaborative things we did in the 70s, early 80s, sociobiology became real big stuff, pushed by E.O. Wilson at Harvard. He was not one of those, somebody said, you can tell a Harvard man, but not much. He wasn't that kind of Harvard man, but the idea was that in sexual reproducing organisms that the females have all the costs associated. If you think about mammals, a sperm is 1/40,000th the size of a woman's one egg. So the cellular inequities, even at the cellular level, the inequities start. And so the idea was that a female should maybe be more cautious about who she cohabits with, or whether that's a rabbit or a human, because the costs are so great with pregnancy and lactation. So we talked about that. And then Dianna started looking in her literature, and some of which she already knew about, all the poetry that's been written about coyness, and except for the Adonis and except for this figurative people, mythical people, it's always the man writing about his coy girlfriend. Had we but whirled enough in time, this coyness lady were no crime. Well,
And John Donne's The Flea.
And gather your rosebuds while you may. So, we have this nice blend, I think, of she keeps me in touch with good fiction and writing, and I tell her about another reproductive strategy in kangaroos or something.
So did you write anything collaboratively as a result of that?
We put it all together, and we still have it in a file, but it's still...
We published the book that we did on the writings of other people. What do you call it?
Natural
the collection.
Encounters.
Yeah,
Natural Encounters. We
published that together.
But we didn't really dwell hard on that coyness stuff. But it totally would be predicted from theory that the woman should say, just a minute here, and not that they know and think about those costs, but women who were more maybe restrained or discriminating should do better by picking some mate who had something to offer from status or riches or whatever.
He's talking about himself.
Yeah. I was going to say earlier, you are witnesses to what she said about it was fortunate her family moved to Blanding, where we had our first encounter in the roadshow.
Well, one thing too is that I think both of us learn in different ways. He loves data, and he loves words, and he can connect words really well with the ideas with one with another that seems a little disparate. I like images, and so images come to me better than they do him. But we can share them, and I can tell him what I saw or felt, and he can tell me, well, this is the point here. Here's the point. Here's a point. Here's a point. And if it isn't significantly different, then it doesn't matter. If it is, let's look at it. So.
I think aging together and growing together, and your story now highlights several different pieces of that, and how beautiful that is for each of you to adapt and to mold to each other, and then to thrive and synergize together and find commonalities. And this part of your story where I love you more than Coke, I think also highlights a really beautiful thing to aging gracefully, in that we can choose to be offended, right? We can take it right on the chin and just take it very personal and be deeply hurt because I asked you and you didn't. But to shrug it off and to be able to laugh about those little nuanced differences, right? And then to make humor of it from both directions. I can see the humor from Hal. I could see that. That's funny and that's kind of witty. And then, but for you to be able to turn it into something humorous as well is also quite beautiful. I think in just maintaining a good relationship, but also taking that pattern as you go along life's journey to Zambia, to all these different areas where it's hard and it's beautiful, but it's super hard and scary, and yet still being able to laugh at times and to be able to make lighter of those stressors. And in our world we live now, I think our life expectancies are being shortened by stress. High cortisol levels are just stressing us out to the max. And there's something that happens to cortisol when you laugh. It kind of calms down. And so an ability to stay just to laugh right under the surface and to be able to look at things with some degree of scientific seriousness, but then also be able to laugh about it is really beautiful. And I think that would help aging gracefully, but also longevity with our cortisol levels, worrying just enough and laughing just enough. You know, that's really, those are the takeaways from your story so far. Those are great.
Yeah, I like that.
I think it was Elder DeFeo. Does that sound? I think it's right. Who said he got up in conference and said, you know, he asked his wife whether they'd had any major problems in their marriage, and she said, sure. But you don't know about them because you have a short memory. Well, you know, that's fine to say. But what does it mean? I mean, does it mean that he forgot what happened yesterday? Probably not. What it probably means is that he chooses to put that memory out of his, if it's a bad one, to put it out of his mind and get along with things. And I think that's really great unless it's excessively one-sided. But I don't think we have that. I think, you know, we can both sort of be angry for 10 minutes and then get over it and say, oh, well, that was kind of funny. we did that. Or you say, well, it wasn't very funny, but, you know, we still have something going here. And, you know, I don't know if I've told Hal this, but I've always kind of viewed marriage as sort of, or partnership, you know, and even with friends, I think this helps to make you realize that people are just absolutely more important than things or events. And that is that I love music. I'm not very proficient at it, but I love music. And I keep thinking that in any key, you have a good foundation. And Shaunna, you'll have to help me here.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, you tell me.
Okay.
All right. But if you're in the key of G, you're going to end up on G in a foundation. It's going to start and probably end in a G.
Yeah.
You have a minor key, but yeah. And you have this really nice foundation that's down there. Then above it, you have notes. And these notes could go this way. And the notes above that can go this way. And the ones at the very top go this way. And all of those can harmonize. Or they can be dissonant and then harmonize. And I think that's kind of like a marriage. And you have choices of which notes you put in there. And so I think, for me anyway, it's nice to think of this nice, steady foundation. I think you wrote a poem about the cello, the steady waviness of the cello.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's that kind of thing. You're going to get some little wavinesses here and there in your life, in your marriage. But what you essentially have is the I don't know what you want to call it, the possibility of having all these notes going lower or up, higher, or whatever you want, but underneath it all, you're going to start on G and you're going to end on G. And I've just always felt that, you know, you have to look forward enough to see where you want to end and knowing that it's got to be right here for this particular set of notes or keys. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. Have I ever told you that? Probably not.
Well, probably,
he's busy with his wood.
It was probably after my head hit the pillow, and you know.
Yeah, it probably was.
Early in our marriage, it was, and I was just the way I was built, I guess. It was really almost maybe weeks or months when I finally had to say, Diana,
oh dear.
There's 2 reasons you go to bed. Neither one of them is to talk. And so before I get my head on the pillow, we better talk about what we need to resolve today, because and it's always been that way, even today. And it's amazing how all these years later, I say goodnight and I'm asleep, literally, almost embarrassing it. I'm asleep in seconds. And
And I'm left reading the Scarlet Letter.
I think that's because I'm so pure or something. I have nothing to fret about.
No God.
But Diana will say, oh, I'll be return the lights off about 20 minutes, and then she does, I guess.
Never know.
Yeah, so we've been lucky that way. So
one thing that I've noticed in spending time with you guys is a very profound lack of complaining. And I think when someone's pleasant to be around, they tend to be on the upswing of life, like more positive and less complainy. And I don't know where that comes from. Can you speak to that? Like, how is it that you've developed this tendency not to complain? Because I grew up in a home where my dad would, he would complain about lots of things, and he called it another word, but like he would be, it was tough. It was tough.
I think early on in our lives, we recognized, and you say, well, you spent all these years in school, and and so it was all right. There's always an alternative, and Diana gets crazy sometimes that she'll make some comment and I'll make some alternative observation. But
it's a null hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
What it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
But really, I think we both feel blessed, it's cliche, I suppose, but, you look around, you see, oh, yeah, you do kind of compare, I guess. But we've seen alternatives, and like we've said this before, both of us, we're pleasant and happy with one another because the alternative was what? Is not pleasant and happy.
My former boyfriend. That was the alternative. Oh, dear.
So yeah, I don't know. I think this I should write a little story. I write little stories, I think we accept the reality of mortality. And like there's an old story, I don't remember the story, but in this story, the woman the sisters are talking to their brother who's dying, and they want to bring in the priest to give him last rites. and he's resisted, and they persist over time. And finally he just said, Mary, Martha, not their real names, one world at a time, please. Just one world at a time. And I think we both live that way. Some might not like what that seems to imply, but this is mortality, and we just never say, well, why me, or this not fair, or I wish I was that. And you're right, and I thought about it, but we don't complain.
Yeah, and it sounds like you don't compare a lot.
No.
You don't complain a lot. Where does that come from? What is that? Is that just you said like an acceptance of mortality? Just things are the way they are, and it's okay. Yeah. And I remember one time we were talking about this a little bit at your place, and you said, I don't get up and complain that I have to go mow the lawn. Yeah. I planted that lawn, and I'm gonna go mow the lawn. Yeah. The wood chopping, Hal, you're just one of the most active people I know, and you're always out doing a project or chopping wood or doing things, and you just kind of forage on, and just it's neat. It's really cool.
I think we really are head on. For example, I was thinking about something the other day, and the Wizard of Oz came up, and rainbows and whatever, and birds fly over the rainbow. Why, oh, why can't I? And I turned to Diana and I said, she can't fly over the rainbow. She's not a pterosaur, a bird, a bat, or an insect. That's why she can't fly over the rainbow.
Yeah, but see, I can see the bird flying over the rainbow. I can. Because that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. And this beautiful line, and what's that piece of music we was listening to the other day?
Out of the many?
The birds being able to fly through a rainbow now. Obviously, they probably can't see it when they're there, but that idea, how exciting that would be to be able to fly through a rainbow and know you're in it. Yeah. I don't know. My mother and my dad was grumpy. My mother was pleasant, but she.
Your mother
life,
had a sharp tongue. She scared me to death for 5 years. But she was a very good woman.
So I don't know. And Diana's dad was always happy, and her mother was always afraid of something. So I don't think necessarily we grew up with it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I hate to blame it on DNA, but I was always pretty happy as a kid. And when I met Diana, she was kind of serious and cute and sexy.
Maybe the point isn't to try and find the source of this lack of complaining, but just to remark on it as maybe a factor in the neuroplasticity that you're able to maintain as you age. It doesn't matter where it came from, but is it a factor in who you are today and how you are navigating the world, in your 80s and still being young and engaged?
Self-victimizing is so bad. It's just a really, really bad rut to get into where I'm the victim and woe is me, and I'm, and we all have we've all been that little kid that, is the victim and feels so sad. And, your mom might put her arm around you and say, it's okay, little Johnny. Like, you're feeling crappy and it's okay. To get rid of that self-victimizing stance and to take a different stance, a stance of wonder and of excitement for learning and adventure, and then just a deep grounded acceptance of, I planted the lawn, I'm going to go mow it. I think that's cool. Diana.
I just was going to comment on it because she said something, but neuroplasticity has that sort of malleable thing, kind of idea, plasticity. And sure, you have to be, I think, actively learning or actively doing. But I think even sitting down and listening, reacting to, or wondering about things adds to that neuroplasticity. I mean, look at your poetry. I think you understand what I'm trying to say. You go out and you do these things. You observe, like a scientist. We all observe in our different ways.
Yeah.
Again, he likes data points. I like images. But once you have that, what are you going to do with it? And so, for me, it's just I have to observe, all right, and that's the doing part of it. But then I have to sit still, and I have to listen to what I've seen, if that makes any sense. I have to listen to how my brain is interpreting that.
Yeah.
And it works for me. And I think just the sitting and absorbing is as important to neuroplasticity, even though we tend to think of that being a motion thing. It's just as important as the thing itself, as long as you're doing the thing itself first.
Yeah. Wordsworth said that poetry is strong emotion recollected in tranquility, right? You are familiar with this quote. And I think, that is the same, that's the same principle. You have to have the experience, but you also have to find those tranquil times to recollect. And so what do? You're never bored, because when you have time when you're not doing something, you are doing something up here. You are, in that process of recollecting and compiling and making sense of and creating poetry or stories out of those experiences that you've had. And that's why you're never bored, because there's no time to be bored. There's always something to do or to recollect or to think or to create.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, I believe that you should learn and then revisit all of the events. Sometimes, you have to, don't you? Learning is a process. You go through the event, you learn something from it. But as you grow older, it seems to me like, anyway, I go back and I say, how does this experience, which is similar to this one but differs a bit, how do I then connect them? And I think that's part of the process too, is trying to keep the brain connected with its various pieces and ideas.
One of the principles of aging gracefully and longevity, if you if you pull like some of these communities with centenarians, the people that live centenarians, the people that live more that's why I brought Shaunna.
Correct the grammar.
But the commonality there is just maintaining a strong sense of community and building community. And there are cool things that you guys do to build community. I'd love you to talk about them, from the garden to the bonfires to the music gatherings.
Please don't mention the Pizza Hut.
to the pizza
oven.
Yeah.
I think all of those just create community and connection and contribute to pleasant, aging and neuroplasticity and connecting with all age groups and stuff. And speak to it a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Back. This neighborhood we're in now is special, but, well, you hear, I hate the term empty nesters, and we've tried to make our home still full of eggs. And it's people like you and others you know very well. But we have no desire to put ourselves in a position. We both agree this. We are enough old ourselves. We don't need to go hang out with a bunch of other old people. Not that we don't have friends, but we don't need that. And in fact, when you mentioned, and I don't know how this fits with the world today, but the last place I would want to ever live is one of these places where you can't have children. You have to be this age, and there can be no families. I know you can find, joy in some of your old friends. But when you have old friends like one of our neighbors who he just seems like I'm just holding on till I die. And I won't mention his name. And everything is everything. For example, I'd like him to come by one day and say, "How the hell are you?" But no, he doesn't say that. He just comes and is grumpy. And we were at a wedding, and they were giving these little shot glasses for whatever they had him for. I don't know. They were just tiny. They're like this, just small, an ounce or two. So I saw, that's for him. And I took one home, and I told him, I'm trying hard not to say his name, I said, "So your glass is always half empty? Your glass is always half empty. It's not half full." And I said, "So I figured out a way to cure that. Here's this glass. If your glass is half empty, get a smaller glass." And I gave him one. But then I met him back, and I don't know.
Who's going to see this?
Yeah. So I don't know. We are too blessed by all these middle-aged and younger couples that are, we sort of grandparent their children a bit. And it just seems like a nice alternative, a better alternative than being in a geriatric neighborhood. And our neighborhood is turning into fewer and fewer old people, because that happens. If you live long enough, all your friends die. We all know that. But
Shaunna, maybe you can tell us about Hal's garden, because you're well acquainted with that.
Hal and Dianna have a garden that is more abundant than any garden I've ever seen. It's just
it could feed two city blocks easy.
So how many raised beds do you have?
There's 14 or 15.
14 or 15 raised beds, and these are like spanning the entire width of the yard, each one.
Yeah.
They're massive, and they just plant everything. It's amazing. And then you have cherry trees, apple trees, pear, peach, all the trees planted in the yard.
And people come over and they help and they participate.
I helped plant onions last year.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You did. Yeah.
And
it's fun. It's easy.
And there's kind of a communal harvest, and it's just community. It's community. It's beautiful.
The secret is the canning is for you, anyone who's listening and cares. we made a canning kitchen in the garage. So the mess is not an issue. Like I feel sorry for people who can in the kitchen where it's a mess, and it is hard. And then we have community canning sessions, and well, I don't know. We just kind of like people. And so we create activities that forces them upon us, and we welcome that.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know.
That's so healthy,
So
though.
we're sort
It's
of
so
freakish.
healthy.
Yeah.
We're a bit like mutants. We're kind of mutants, I think.
You don't have a fence around your yard?
No.
Yeah.
We had a fence when we first moved in. Now, we've been in the same place for 50 years, and most people would be bored at 50 years and living in the same place. We're not. But when we first moved there, we had a fence that was between us and our next-door neighbors whom we loved. And then we decided it was too long to walk around the fence, so we built a stile. And we used to cross that stile several times a day. And finally, we said, this is ridiculous. We took down the stile, we took down the fence. And it's been that way ever since. And we're still
neighbors. The fence wasn't holding anything in.
No.
It was kind of like holding people out.
It was holding that calf that had a calf in one time. So, But we took it down. Yeah. And I disagree with Robert Frost. But then he had a different situation. He had cows coming into his place and everything, his neighbors' cows, and he needed a fence.
Yeah.
But good fences don't make good neighbors. They just don't. And because you have to go around to get to them, and you don't do it. And it hides you from seeing if they're home. So Robert Frost was very good with other things, but not that one.
I think it's because in the days everybody had a cow or something in the backyard, and you needed fences to keep your neighbor's cow out of your garden. Yeah. But now, I think.
Well, we can't even keep the deer out of ours.
So I would guess if a person say, "Well, I need a fence to keep my dog in," my first inclination would say, "Get rid of the dog and take the fence down."
Well, it just opens the doors to neighbors coming and visiting, and and just creating that.
Kids passing from one yard through the shortcut through the yard.
We have neighbors that are friends, have kids that have friends that are. The only way to get to it is through our yard, and so every day we see them running.
That reminds you. You know what we should do? I'm thinking. Okay, so
here we go.
The other day, I said, Diana, the distance between my brain and my tongue is a really small molecule, like helium. An atom, not a molecule. And I said so, and I excused myself in some of my comments because. She sort of said, "I can't believe what came out of your mouth." And I said, "Well, how suppose I feel? I didn't know it was coming either. It was there, and then it was on my tongue." And
that is the truest thing he said all day.
Yeah. I mean, it goes from my brain to my tongue, and it passes through this space.
There's no
faster.
That's fast.
Than the speed of light.
Our time is just about up. I just wanted to thank you guys for coming on. Any other pearls for us as we venture into, longevity and aging? Like what else?
As long as we're bragging on each other, you're bragging on us. So these beautiful devices that you create are just so much fun, but they're not as fun as you and Shaunna. Okay. And we are so glad you didn't move that far. We're upset that you moved out of our close neighborhood, but you aren't that far away. And I personally am grateful, and I know Diana is, that you're still close in lots of ways.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and we like you if we share our caramel popcorn.
That's right. That's right. Shaunna had a poem that she wrote about a visit that we had once upon a time.
Yeah.
Under the cherry tree.
Top of mind.
I don't know if it's on my phone. I think that one I wrote down.
It's a good one.
It's a good one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
and it really made and in relation to that, there are things as you get older that are not fun. And you have to figure out a way of accepting them. Some surgeries, some sicknesses that you can't overcome, or whatever it happens to be. But I think so far we've been successful of saying, okay, this will pass too, and we'll figure out a way of living with it. And again, age is hard to live with sometimes, but what's the alternative? Yeah. So
yeah. Last little thing. The collective journaling that you guys do sometimes. Tell me what it's called. What do you guys call these
writing
excerpts?
The truth is not enough.
The truth is not
enough. That's his.
I don't have enough patience. I don't know if that's the right word. I have to think about something else and need to be doing too. So I decided I'm going to write a history. I was going to write stories about my life and stuff. And I limit myself mainly to a page because that's about as long as I can sit still. And so, yeah, they're fun. You've seen some. We have 6 volumes. And then Diana has a journal that is a really serious journal that
I'm like not like him. I've got, let's see, we were married in 1961. I've kept a journal since then. So I've got some 1,400 pages of typed journal.
Wow.
And it's not like his in the sense that it's not as fun a story to read. But I think what it does is it tells our children, these people were in our home and we did this and we talked about this. And then this person spoke at church and he said something I have to think about and don't know if I believe or do I believe it. And it's just I don't know, some people may call it a diary, but I don't look at it as that. I look at it as a history more than anything. And it has my feelings about a lot of things, but my children are not going to read that until I die because it is very personal. And I don't want them plying me with questions for the rest of my life. I want to live my life. But it's there, and I think it's a good history, like his stories are, because it tells what he did, but his observations and how it connects to other things. And I hope that's what mine does, even though some of it is simply, we had spaghetti for dinner tonight, something really simple. Well, they know what I like.
Which is not trivial. Her spaghetti is not trivial.
But yeah, so, and it is, sometimes I think it's the bane of my life. I don't want to do it. I just have no desire to go sit down and type up these things. But I can't quit. And I don't know what that comes from. I just can't quit. So
journaling can be such a stabilizing, strengthening influence in our lives, and especially as they talk about gratitude journaling as good as medicine. And there's some studies on that, and I think it's neat that you guys are doing that and capturing little time capsules here and there. It's cool.
The one thing that is really great about a journal in just terms of our life is that when he gets something wrong, I can go to the journal and say, see, I told you so.
That seldom happens.
Oh, it did just the other day. He was relating the story of how we lost our first child, and I told him what happened to me, and because he wasn't there, it happened to me, and I happened to write it down. And he told me, no, you're wrong. The doctor was there. And I said, no, I wasn't. And he insisted that I was wrong and told the people he was telling it to that I was wrong. I got up, got my journal, opened it up, and read it. And he said, oh.
But then I quickly said, but maybe but that doesn't prove that guy was just because you wrote it in that. Tried to escape.
Well, that's what our children are going to have to figure out. Was I telling the truth or was he?
Thank you all so much for coming on today. We sure love you guys. And Shaunna, thank you for you joining us today as well. This has been a really fun podcast. I hope it helped our listeners. Like and subscribe as usual. And just thank you guys. This was really fun.